There is an idea when it comes to generations across time, across humanities, and especially across sports. The biggest question that we constantly have in sports media and sports fandoms is how would our athletes do against the athletes 100 years ago? And of course, in Muay Thai, in MMA, we're always comparing the past golden ages to the athletes today. In the big picture, human experiences, the questions always come up. Who would win? Roman legions or medieval knights? Those are thousands of years apart, 1,000 years apart. You also have Persian immortals versus Mongolian archers. And in MMA, you've heard the questions before. How would a Kamaru Usman do against a George St. Pierre? How would a Fedor Emelianenko do against a Francis Ngannou? How would a Chuck Liddell do against a Alex Pereira? These are the constant questions that we have in humanity. One of the constant what-ifs and the big ideas when it comes to sports is comparing generations. And what we're seeing right now in the welterweight division is a shift. The old guard is beginning to leave, and the new age generation is beginning to step in. So we're seeing one generation butt up and attack the generation before it. This weekend is emblematic of this. The UFC Fight Night, we have the younger, up-and-coming Sean Brady against the long-time veteran Gilbert Burns. The old generation that Gilbert Burns is a part of, the Jorge Masvidals, Stephen Thompson, Colby Covington, and Kamaru Usman. All of those people have come off losses in their last fights or have had mixed success over the last few years, falling to the newer generation coming in at welterweight, being the Jack Della Madalenas, the Sean Bradys, the Shavkat Rakhmonovs, and of course, Belal Muhammad. Just for a little direct comparison, Sean Brady, the young man who's been around for a minute now, made his debut in the UFC 2018-2019, somewhere in there. Gilbert Burns made his debut in the UFC in 2013. Things move so quickly in MMA that just those 6 years is considered a generation apart. 6 years difference, and we have an old man on his way down versus a young man on his way up. But 6 years is not that massive of a difference. But in MMA, we think the people nowadays have better training, better nutritionists, better metas, and better ideas as to what's going on. Of course, things are never that simple. It's never just going to be that the newer athletes know more. Their ideas were built on the shoulders of giants, so yes, they're going to have some better meta ideas, but 6 years, there are a lot of other variables at play when it comes to habits, when it comes to accidents, when it comes to issues that a fighter might have. There's a lot more variables at play, and we're going to see this in this matchup. But one thing that I really do like about this matchup is it's also a difference in generation, not just in MMA, but in also jiu-jitsu. Gilbert Burns is a world champion jiu-jitsu fighter from more than a decade ago, against Sean Brady, who is a Gracie Jiu-Jitsu black belt, a lifetime in Jiu-Jitsu, a very talented Jiu-Jitsu fighter who has a win over Craig Jones, which is surreal right there. So we get to see the old generation versus the new generation, both in MMA and Jiu-Jitsu. But just for a little perspective here, Gilbert Burns made his UFC debut back in 2013, and he's been a staple of the welterweight division ever since. I think he moved around a little bit, but mostly a staple of the welterweight division ever since. For some perspective, who was the champion when Gilbert Burns made his UFC debut? The title was in fact vacant because George St. Pierre had just vacated the title and left it behind. That's how long ago that was. We essentially have a fighter from George St. Pierre's era butting right up against Belal Muhammad's era. Now, Sean Brady versus Gilbert Burns. Let's talk about it. Let's get into it a little bit more, looking at their habits, looking at who they are as a person, and coming into this matchup, who really has the momentum. Now, Sean Brady, I'm so impressed watching him with that massive V-taper this man has. He has a smothering top game because his shoulders are wider than his opponent's chests most of the time. He's started in Muay Thai, and he's got a really impressive tight 1-2, but really his talent lies in his jiu-jitsu. He became a Gracie jiu-jitsu black belt and has spent his entire life training it at this point. The very impressive things that he does is he takes the kick opportunities and doesn't give up on them. So if you throw a kick at this man, he will get a single leg. He will get a knee tap. Those are very, very impressive things. He does need an opening. If you don't give him an opening, he struggles to find takedowns, and that's what we saw in his Bilal Muhammad fight, which was the first loss of his professional career. Now, on the feet, you do see some shades of his Muay Thai background. Really great movement, great 1-2 outside leg kick, that sort of stuff. He is, and he likes to switch stances as well. He has some very good training in his back pocket as he worked with Georges St-Pierre's mental coach as well. Now, the Georges St-Pierre mental coach is really interesting because that's something I know a lot about. A lot of fighters began to use sports psychologists after Georges St-Pierre really started that. Georges St-Pierre had what was a young wonderkin, right? He came in, he took the title, sweeping the great Matt Hughes, looked incredible doing it. He rose on the pound-for-pound rankings really quickly because of how impressive he looked when he won the title. And then his first defense, he lost to someone who would be a featherweight today, or smaller, potentially. He got knocked out in the first round against Matt Serra. One of the biggest upsets in MMA history. Embarrassing. Like, it's just... This guy couldn't sleep at night. He couldn't stop thinking about Matt Serra. He couldn't get over it. And he didn't even want an instant rematch. He wanted to climb his way back and earn that rematch. But he just couldn't get over it. So he hired the sports psychologist. And one of the things that he did is write Matt on a brick and then threw it into the St. Lawrence River in Montreal. And it's very symbolic. I've talked about it. You got to take care of your mental health. And even those things, it's very symbolic, but if you can take your mental stress and make a physical embodiment of that stress and throw it away, you might find peace in doing that. And that worked for Georges St-Pierre, and that also works very well for Sean Brady, who does the same thing. He says that he does resets quite a bit because he struggles focusing in fights. So it can be a tap on the shoulder, a tap on the head, something like that, or a word from his coaches to make sure that when he begins to drift, he's always being brought back in the moment. But the biggest mental training that he does is the picturing. So he goes through the walks, he goes through walking around the cage, he goes through the introductions, and then when he's sitting in the sauna, he said, he's picturing being interviewed by Joe Rogan. So when these things come up, it's not his first rodeo, he's not nervous. He's done this before, he's done it every day leading up to the fight. And he said he really struggled in the Bilal Muhammad fight and then needed to hire a mental coach after that. So let's talk about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world champion and top contender Gilbert Burns. Standing up, he has very active hands, which he loves to use to set up his massive overhand. Now, you think he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world champion, and he really likes to use it. He has a couple things that he goes to in MMA a lot, and those are the layers on his takedown. He does a very deep takedown, and if his opponent defends it, he has ways of getting on their back, transitioning. So there's always, if you counter him, he knows the counter to that. You know, he's one or two layers deep on his takedowns. He's very good at that. He has a great back body lock, and he's able to take opponents down from there. There's a few areas where he's just so impressive in jiu-jitsu and grappling. Such an impressive specimen. But really, his bread and butter is his overhand. Fakes a takedown, goes low, comes over the top. And this goes back, he dropped Kamaru Usman with that exact punch. He early on in his career, like the first knockouts that he had, I forget the guys' names right now. Moray and Sago, exactly the same punch. It's this massive overhand, and he's had that power for 10 years, and he's gotten better and better and better at landing it. So he sets it up, jab, 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 whatever it might be, jab 1-2, something like that, 1-2, jab, fakes a takedown, then an overhand. That is the exact combination that Bilal Muhammad found success with against Sean Brady. Is he going to be able to do it? Well, the thing is with Gilbert Burns is on the feet, he's not a systematic striker like you see someone like an Anderson Silva do, for example, of building off of what really works, finding what you're doing and then exploiting it and building off of my knowledge. Gilbert Burns is a guy who welcomes chaos. He welcomes attacks. He welcomes trading. So things can get very chaotic in there, and that's where he thrives. That's where he does really, really well. So is he going to be able to set that up? I don't entirely know, but it's certainly a tool in his repertoire. That overhand, it's like he's throwing a baseball, it's like he's throwing almost a Dan Henderson-like overhand because he commits everything to it. And that's very much all of his strikes, whether it's a jab or a kick or whatever it is. Gilbert Burns does not half commit to any strikes. And of course, that is also the thing that gets him into trouble, is that he is not half-assing any strikes. He is throwing all of his strikes with full knockout intent. And these are the things that when you are fully committing, you might be leaving yourself open. You might be leaving yourself open. And that's why people do knock him down. Like Khamzat Chimaev knocked him down. Jack Della Maddalena was able to knock him down. Of course, Kamaru Usman was able to knock him down with a very impressive pole counter. So it's tough to say. Now, on the grappling side, on the feet, I think there's a few areas where Gilbert Burns is going to do very well against Sean Brady. Sean Brady seems to, against Bilal Muhammad, struggle against someone who's a bit more aggressive, who likes to be the hammer more than they like to be the nail, and that's Bilal Muhammad. He was able to take control of the fight very quickly just by jabbing to the chest to avoid takedowns. And once Sean Brady didn't have control of the fight, it was hard for him, as he talked about, mentally to get back in the fight. And physically, he wasn't in that fight pretty much at all. That was a really impressive win from Bilal Muhammad, one of his better wins, giving Sean Brady his very first career loss. If Gilbert Burns is constantly on the front foot, he's very likely to be defending takedowns much more effectively, initiating his own takedowns, landing overhands, but he's also going to be getting hit against a person who's as skilled and as fast as Sean Brady. His hands are very impressive, Sean Brady's is. I think it's sometimes the confidence that if he can't get the fight to the ground, he can't get the fight to where he wants to be, he doesn't seem to adapt to plan B, or he lacks the confidence to execute a plan B. And he should. His hands are really quick. His hands are really impressive. His kicks are so powerful. I would like to see Sean Brady work off the counterpunching a little bit more, but of course, I can't make predictions based on what I think might happen or what I would like to happen. We can only look at what we've seen in the past. So ultimately this weekend, if you are a betting man, I don't entirely know where to go on this one. I think Sean Brady is just a slight favorite, but most places have a pick'em. Over 5 rounds, I'm not overly confident in either man, to be honest. Gilbert Burns, I think, often commits himself and is aggressive when he feels, threatened or safe. The guy loves a good exchange. Sean Brady picks his exchanges much more carefully, but he can often get hit. If he doesn't get the takedowns that he likes, he doesn't do a takedown like an old Georges St. Pierre who's almost doing a tackle and running through his opponents. He does that knee tap, or he catches a kick and then takes someone down from there. But he doesn't have a very good, the next layer if someone defends that takedown. If they defend that takedown, there's no extra layer for him. So I'm hoping to see Sean Brady here dig deep. Maybe he has to go to his plan B and then win from there. Maybe he has to go to the next layer and then win from there. But I think it's going to be very telling for the future of his career what we see Sean Brady against Gilbert Burns here. It is also a question of Gilbert Burns, where he is in his career. We're talking about fights where he was in his prime, such as Kamaru Usman and maybe Khamzat Chimaev to an extent, but the man's been dropped quite a few times since then. The man has been knocked out. The man is certainly the oldest he's ever been. Maybe there's questions in training. Maybe he's not as motivated in the training room as he once was. I don't entirely know where those variables fit in, but those variables do exist in this fight. So I want to pick Gilbert Burns based on what I've seen, but it's the variables that make me pick Sean Brady. So that's completely up to you. Is this a rising star, his new generation, taking out the old generation? Gilbert Burns is one of the last people of this generation to still be in the top 10 welterweight division, and Sean Brady might take him out. So I'm excited for this fight. This is a really good 5-round fight coming up this weekend at the UFC Apex there in Las Vegas. If you're in town, make sure to check it out. This really makes it a lot funner that you're going to have people like Jack Della Maddalena, Shavkat Rakhmonov, you're going to have Ian McConnell-Gary, you're going to have Sean Brady. It's going to be a really nice top 5 for a little while here, everyone vying for Bilal Muhammad's title. Really excited for it. Bilal Muhammad recently was talking about his title shot and how active he was. Like he said, I just fought. I'm not going to fight Shavkat 3 months after winning the title. Give me a minute to recover. He said, I think Shavkat should fight Kamaru Usman. And Shavkat keeps asking for the title, of course. I mean, I'm always going to be behind guys like Shavkat Rakhmonov. I love Kamaru Usman. He's just so talented and so good. Honestly, it is a winnable fight for him, but it certainly deserves a little bit more time. If I was the UFC, yes, I'd be trying to book Shavkat versus Bilal Muhammad right away. If it's not possible, the Kamaru Usman fight is a really, really fun one. Let's move down the card here because there's a few other fights that are pretty neat, and then there's a lot of fights that are quite passable. I think it's a main event heavy card. You have the former champion Jessica Andrade taking on Natalya Silva. Now, if you know how to circle, know how to jab 1-2, maybe do a dip jab and do some head movement, you're going to beat Jessica Andrade every time out. She's a former champion with tons of power, but she fell in love with that power so much that she stopped doing the stuff that led to the knockouts. This has to be a Natalya Silva win right here. The Canadian Kyle Nelson taking on Steve Garcia should be a banger. You have Matt Schnell against Alessandro Costa. Great fight right there. That's going to be fight of the night, knockout of the night, submission of the night. There's some performance in the night going on there. It's too chaotic to pick a winner. Matt Schnell versus Alessandro Costa. That's a banger. You got Trevor Peek and Yanal Ashmouz. Yeah, absolute banger right there. Ovince St. Preux versus Ryan Spann. Huh. Maybe it's time to cut both fighters. Ovince St. Preux, Strikeforce staple from like 10 years ago. Been trading wins and losses ever since. I mean, come on, man. And then, Ryan Spann, I mean, he was looking like a pretty good fighter. Been trading wins and losses for a little while. 3-fight losing streak. I mean, I don't really know. I expect that one to be a pretty bad slugfest, I would imagine. But yeah, maybe cut the whole division. You also have Andre Lima against Felipe Dos Santos, again at 125. Love that fight. That is such a good fight right there. The unbeaten Andre Lima is coming in against Felipe Dos Santos, who's just looking like one of the hottest prospects in that division. Love that fight right there. My guy, Andrew Petrosky, is looking to fight Dylan Budka. It's no fight for him. There's no easy fight for him. That is a tough one right there. And I think his job might be on the line in all honesty. But I do like Andre Petrosky. It'll be definitely a main event heavy card, but we'll check out all the fights and then let you folks know what was worth watching and all that sort of stuff. Just this morning, we had the Rizin MMA fighter who had a victory at Super Rizin 3, Ren Hiramoto, host a press conference in a dashing suit, might I add, to dispel the assumption that he was on performance-enhancing drugs during his last fight. For a few weeks now, Twitter has been abuzz, especially Japanese Twitter has been abuzz with accusations against Ren Hiramoto because one of his trainers came out and said that, yes, he is doing PEDs. I gave it to him. I gave him PEDs and he was doing them. And Ren Hiramoto said, enough. Enough is enough. I'm going to host a press conference. I'm going to wear my nicest suit. I'm going to host a press conference and I'm going to make sure everybody knows I didn't do any PEDs. Now, Ren Hiramoto, he was a karate fighter growing up. He also was into boxing for most of his life. I think he won some national junior amateur titles in both kickboxing and boxing, maybe karate as well. Really impressive young man. He wanted to do professional boxing a bit more, but then aimed his career a little bit more at kickboxing. He was a top contender for quite a while and now has transitioned to MMA, and he's done very, very well in MMA, despite not being that experienced in MMA. He's a very good fighter. I think he's been able to pick up one of the titles in Rizin, and he's also been kind of a perpetual top contender. But he's an exciting fighter. He's a great banging fighter. He's really always exciting to watch, kind of a must-watch fighter. And due to his look, this guy looks like an idol, doesn't he? He looks like a pop star. He's very popular as well. He's a really cool guy, exciting. But do you think it is an example of the Shakespearean "he who doth protest too much," methinks? To say, you're protesting a little too much and it might be telling. Now, I'm not saying that everyone who defends themselves is automatically guilty. No, not at all. But I think when it comes to sports and performance-enhancing drugs, hosting a press conference with your lawyers present that he himself booked It wasn't Rizin. This isn't Rizin's press conference. This was Ren Hiramoto's press conference that he booked out of his own time and money with his lawyers and his nice suit, hosted the media, just to say, none of this is true. I had knee surgery and I took some stuff for that, but I don't think any of that was performance-enhancing drugs. Is it an example of he who doth protest too much? Quite possibly, because it could have been a tweet of just like, oh, I didn't do that. Wait for my samples to come in. Apparently, Rizin has taken samples. I didn't know that they were drug testing in Japan. It's not clear on what has been going on. It looks like they might be taking samples and then not testing them until they need to or something. It's not entirely clear. Back in Pride and K1 during the Kogataki Golden Age, they specifically told you what they were testing for and what they were not testing for, including what PEDs were cool and what PEDs were not cool. Mostly they were testing for illicit drugs, not so much for performance-enhancing drugs. Rizin, I guess, is trying to be a little bit more clean, but it seems like they're only testing fighters or making it public when the fighters want to. So Ren Hiramoto during Super Rizin 3 just last month did submit a sample and we're waiting to hear back on those results. But ahead of time, don't worry, he got ahead of it with his massive press conference and said, I'm definitely not doing any performance enhancing drugs. Definitely not. It's not true. None of it's true. The sample will be clear. Whereas, like, if you weren't guilty, like me, if you did a PED test on me right now, I'm not going to host a press conference to dispel that I did it. I'm just going to say, well, we'll wait for the test because I'm pretty sure I'm clean. I think when it comes to sports and performance enhancing drugs, we give the most space and most forgiveness on those who admit it. And look at people like a Chael Sonnen or a Dan Henderson or, to a Bob Sapp to an extent. The people who openly did performance-enhancing drugs and admitted it. We're pretty forgiving when it comes to those guys' legacies. It's not a massive thing when you look back on their career. It ended up being a little bit more of a footnote. Whereas when we talk about people like Jon Jones, that is the question of his entire legacy. He is, record-wise, title-wise, the greatest fighter in history. It's just how much you value those asterisks. Jon Jones, on the other hand, unlike your Chael Sonnens and Dan Hendersons, never admitted to taking PEDs. He has denied it every step of the way. So I think if you did do PEDs, it is much more forgiving in everyone's collective consciousness in MMA, in sports, to just say, yeah, I did. Look, I'm still learning. I still want to get better. I needed an edge in this fight, and I'll come back stronger. I apologize, but I needed to. Which is essentially what Dan Henderson said. He said, look, I was an old man. I needed some testosterone in my system. Chael Sonnen. He said, look, to compete with these guys at their level, they were all juicing. I needed to juice too. And I think also hosting a press conference makes it such a spectacle that someone like Ren Hiramoto from Rizin maybe struggles to move on a little bit because this has become the turning point, the focus of everything that his entire career will be measured by. Whereas instead of just being a small footnote of maybe he tested positive, maybe he didn't, we'll see about the sample, instead of just being a thing that happened in his career, it is now the focal point that we will talk about for all future fights of this young man. All future fights, we will always talk about this moment because it has become such a spectacle. But the thing is, we still talk about PEDs almost every week and it completely depends where you land. I think giving people an unfair advantage when you're punching skulls is a not great thing, but I also fully recognize that banning it has been ineffective at doing anything. Morally, ethically, I don't have a huge issue with it. Competitively, I can see an issue with it, but let me know what you think. Was Ren Hiramoto on the juice? Should Japan continue testing these athletes? If you tested positive, are you going to host a press conference? If you were accused of doing performance-enhancing drugs, are you going to host a press conference on that? Or are you just going to let the results speak for themselves? Am I right? Or admit it and just move forward from it? Okay, so there's 2 clips from last week. There was no UFC, but we had some other stuff going on that I can't play the clips, but I'm going to put the links down below for everyone. So it goes to the LowKick MMA website and you can check them out from there. But there were 2 absolutely disgusting clips that I'm struggling to watch. But Trevor Bosniak in BKFC snapped his ankle. And then you know what he did? He just put it back and kept fighting. Oh my God, okay, I'll watch it live. Oh my God, it's so gross. Oh, it went behind his knee and he twisted it because he fell down. And he just put it back into place. He just grabs it and twists it. Oh my God. Let me see one more time. Oh my God, it's so gross. I'm going to put the link down below. That is disgusting. BKFC Edmonton, y'all are nasty. Also, the same weekend, we had an MMA fighter broke his nose clearly in the fight and then grabs it and just puts it back where it was. It was like almost like a Rich Franklin against Anderson Silva-esque broken nose of it's on the other side of his face. He just grabs it, puts it back into place. The commentator says, "Oh, nice elbow. I think that nose just broke. I heard the crack and I see the bend." And then he follows up with, "Did you see that? He just put it back in place. He just put it back in place. I feel my nose is broken. Click. Let me put it back in place." Okay, let me watch the clip live on air here. Yeah, great elbow. Oh, the fighter man, he does not care at all about his very clearly broken elbow. Oh, broken nose. Just grabs it, pushes it back in place. That's disgusting. That is just terrible. I'll put the links down below for you folks, but I put some images on screen there. Thing is that we don't want to put too much gruesome stuff on YouTube, and we don't want to worry about copyright infringement from some of these other companies. So check the links out down below because that is absolutely disgusting. I'm only going to watch these once in my life and never ever again because I'm not a weird sadist like that. I don't get off on watching people break their limbs and put it back, but those are the extreme ends of the human experience. That is the human condition when you are fighting. And a great example of what I was talking about last week when fighters are too tough for their own good. Always remember that Jacare Souza, during a grappling match, was in an armbar. And if he tapped out, he would have lost. But instead, what he did is allowed the opponent to break his arm. He then took his limp, broken arm and tucked it into his belt, continued fighting with one arm. That is a great example of fighters too tough for their own damn safety. You saw this guy break his nose in what is not a UFC title fight, just picks it up, puts it back into place. Another guy in a builder league of the BKFC break his ankle in half and just puts it back and keeps going. Jesus. Oh my God. Oh, anyway, enough talking about that sort of stuff. Let's move forward here and take a look at some of the other items that are going on this weekend because there are some other really great fights aside from the UFC Fight Night. From Denver, Colorado, Jonathan Haggerty will look to defend his Muay Thai crown against Superlek Kiatmukau. I'm going to give this fight, this is an MMA show, right? But and on this side, I have a Muay Thai and kickboxing show. Typically, there's not much going on in Muay Thai and kickboxing, so that show I was struggling to find content. This time, there is so much Muay Thai and kickboxing that is bleeding over to the MMA show now. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about 1168 hosted in Denver, Colorado. One Championships looking to make a move into the US. They're going to host 1168 there and 1169 there. It was supposed to have Stamp Fairtex. She dropped out due to injury. I believe they were also supposed to take Denise Zamboanga and have an interim title fight with her, but she dropped out due to injury as well. So they just scrapped the whole thing. So whatever. But let's look at the main event here. Jonathan Haggerty has spent a lifetime, an English-born fighter, and has now spent a lifetime on the Stadium Bangkok scene and cutting his teeth in One Championship Muay Thai. He had those wars against Rod Tang when Rod Tang was really in his prime, and both of those fights set what their career was going to be and really built One Championship's entire Muay Thai brand around those fights. Both were young guys at the time, but now Jonathan Haggerty, he was ahead of the pack, but he was like a top contender who just couldn't beat the champion, but he would trade wins and losses every once in a while. At one point, he decided to go up in weight, and he's aged up a little bit. He's not as young as he was, but I think he's just starting to enter his prime. So he goes up in weight, and then what happens? He starts knocking everybody out. Like, he took the one title, the Muay Thai title against Nongo Hama, and Nongo maybe is an all-time great, stadium legend, knocks him out in the first round. Then against Fabricio Andrade, the very impressive MMA striker who destroyed John Lineker, they challenged each other for a kickboxing title, knocks him out. And then he looks to defend his Muay Thai title against Felipe Lobo, knocks him out. Go up in weight, you're a pretty good decision fighter, you have very good elbows, very good front kicks, goes up in weight, and then his punches start to have a little more impact, a little more punch to him. But coming up, this is one of the most insane fighters that you can fight. Superlek Kiatmukau. He is a master of the Kiatmukau gym very special kick that he has. So it's like they train their kick a little bit of a different way to generate more power, and Superlek is a master of that. He has a whole quiver full of various kicks, whether we're talking front kicks, whether we're talking teep kicks, whether we're talking body, leg, head, whatever it might be. And no matter the range, you can be clinching with this guy and he's going to find places to kick you. You can be at range with him and he's going to find places to kick you. And for the last few years, this guy has found his stride. He's on a 12-fight win streak in Muay Thai, and that's only going back to like 2022. He beat Super Ball for the True For You title, which was a big deal at the time. And then he entered one championship and just went on a hot streak. So he's just beaten Takeru Sagawa, who was a multi-division K1 kickboxing champion in his own sport in kickboxing, and dominated him. It was not a close fight at all. He absolutely dominated. He made Takeru look like he was in a lower league. Right before that, he beat Rodtang Jemwangnong in a very close fight. The title wasn't on the line due to a weight miss, so now Superlek is going up in weight. Good choice. But it was a great fight against Rodtang in which he very clearly won. Before that, he's knocking people out like Tagir Kalalov, the towering Nabil Anane, Daniel Williams. Daniel Puertas was a very close fight. He beat Panpayak, but Panpayak is amazing and he still beat him. He beat Walter Gonzalez, Taiko Naito, but look, he's just 12-fight win streak in Muay Thai, knockouts along the way. He's beating the champions in both Muay Thai and kickboxing, but now he's struggling to make the weight. So he's going up in weight for the first time in his career to face Jonathan Haggerty for a title. Now, from what I've seen doing tape study on Superlek, the best way to beat him is to kick with him. So whenever he's throwing a kick, it's going to hurt. That's fine. But you need to kick that trailing leg to make sure that he has no base to kick on. Now, I want to say it was Daniel Puertas was doing that really well against him. It was Ilyas Inahashi who was doing that. Was every time that Superlek was kicking, Ilyas Inahashi would kick him. So you kick with him to shut down his kicking game a little bit more, take him out of it a little bit more. But that was also a few years ago. At this point, he was a kick fighter before. Now he's like an all-rounder. Doesn't matter if he's elbows, knees, kicks, punches from range, in close, clinch, whatever it might be. This guy is a machine. One thing that does give me pause, though, is that for 8 weeks, Jonathan Haggerty went out to Denver, Colorado to acclimatize to fighting above sea level, fighting at elevation. It's no joke. The best athletes in the world struggle at elevation, whether we're talking Mexico City or Denver, Colorado. It is a tough, tough place to compete. Superlek is just going out 3 or 4 days ahead of time from Thailand to Denver, Colorado. So maybe jet lag is a factor. Maybe food adjustment is a factor. I don't know, but elevation almost certainly will be a factor in this fight. It's also the first time he's gone up to this weight class. No adjustment there. So, it's like we just talked about, it's the X factors. It's the questions that we have for this fight that give me pause. I want to say Superlek is a more talented fighter. If they were fighting in Bangkok and maybe they were at a weight class that they had fought a bunch of times before, and I don't know. But given all these X factors, I'm beginning to think Jonathan Haggerty might win. This is the most important fight of Jonathan Haggerty's career. This is his legacy fight. Let's continue scrolling down 1168. Cade Ruotolo dropped out due to injury against Mikey Musumeci, which was a weird match anyway. Like, Mikey Musumeci is tiny. These guys were like 2 or 3 weight classes apart, but whatever. Liam Harrison is going to have his war against Sexan. Sexan is an always must-tune-in fighter. He has had win or lose. This man is so exciting. You need to see Sexan fight. Honestly, go look him up on YouTube right now and watch him fight, because he's always in wars. He's always in the most exciting stuff. He always wins the performance bonus in one championship, win or lose, because this guy is just nonstop. Against Liam Harrison, who was quite a Muay Thai fighter in his prime, one of the best foreign Muay Thai fighters to compete. He's one of the first UK champions in stadium history as well. But he's coming off of a knee injury. He's pretty old as well, but this guy just has no quit in him. Constant determination. He's got maybe the most exciting fight in Muay Thai history when he fought against Muay Thai, and they traded 5 knockdowns in 2 minutes. Amazing fight. You also have Ongla Nsong, who's the former 2-division champion, is going to be competing against Shamil Edrigan. That's a tough fight for Ongla. I think Ongla is aiming towards retirement, but yeah, I think Shamil from Turkey, wrestler, really gets the win there. John Lineker will be looking to make his Muay Thai debut. John Lineker, of course, a veteran of one championship and the UFC, feared for his power no matter where he's competing. Bibiano Fernandes was able to set the record for most title defenses in one championship history, and then John Lineker took the title by knocking him out. A few wins, a few losses later, now he's going to be making his Muay Thai debut against Asa Tenpao. I've talked to Asa Tenpao a few times. I've interviewed John Lineker as well, but I've talked to Asa Tenpao a few times. He wants to make the Triple Crown. He wants gold in MMA, kickboxing, and Muay Thai because he's already competed in all three. He's a great fit in one championship, the American Ninja, because he can fight in all three sports, and he's got some submission grappling in his back pocket as well. This is probably going to be an easy win for Asa Tenpao, but I think John Lineker, he just wants to fight. He's just so much smaller. New rules, new sport. He's so much smaller in terms of height and reach, but yeah, it should be a good win for Asa Tenpao. You have the young Adrian Lee against Nico Cornejo. The young Adrian Lee, 17, 18 years old. He is of the Lee family dynasty. Regardless of the quality of opponent, I wish him all the best. I hope they don't move him too fast. Find him opponents in his range, kind of in his wheelhouse, to keep building slowly over time, and he keeps getting better. You have the young Johan Ghazali, who's, I think, same thing. He's 17 years old in Muay Thai, Malaysian born. He's got like 5 impressive wins in one championship Muay Thai, most of them by way of knockout, mind you. Young man just had his first loss in his career, and now he's going to fight Joso Tuzo Cruz from Mexico, who's coming off of a couple of losses. So probably a good fight for Johan there. But yeah, Johan Ghazali is getting the hard sell from one championship of someone that you need to watch. But yeah, 1168 is going to be a ton of fun. Definitely watch it. Definitely check it out. Also this weekend, you have a Bellator fight event. Let's take a quick look at it as well. You have Usman Nurmagomedov taking on Alexander Shibili. That is a great fight right there. I do like that fight. I think that's really good. Shibili is on an impressive 9-fight win streak. Like this guy, whether it's an ACA, Bellator, he was in Fight Nights Global, all over the place. Really impressive fighter, but you got the Dagestani trained Usman Nurmagomedov. This is, you're not going to beat Usman Nurmagomedov for a title. I expect that to be ground out. A nice clean win for Usman Nurmagomedov. Lorenz Larkin versus Levan Shokheli in the co-main event. Douglas Lima against Aaron Jeffrey. Probably go get a drink during that one. It's going to be a bit of a snoozer. Yeah, so it'll be a pretty great fight. Looking forward to that one. Some exciting stuff going on with this. And then just tomorrow, when this goes live, so it's the second today, and then on September 3rd, you have Naoya Inoue going to be taking on TJ Doheny. And this is, of course, the monster, Naoya Inoue, looking to defend his title. And he is unbeaten, spotless, 27-0 record, holding titles in WBA, WBC, IBF, all the 3 letters, pound for pound top guy, dangerous hands. I want to say something like out of 27 wins, he has 26 knockouts. This guy's absolutely incredible. Mixes high and low really well, sets everything up by attacking the body and then coming up high, or going high and then attacking low. The guy has all the tools to become an all-time great. Just an incredible striker. He's going to be fighting the Ireland's TJ Doheny, who has been fighting in Japan for a little while now. He's actually unbeaten in Japan and was a former one of the letters champions, I think IBF or something like that. He's got a couple losses in his career, but no losses by way of knockout. Now, if you look at the betting guide, you are essentially just picking in what round is Naoya Inoue going to knock him out. Is it a decision? You're not picking who's going to win. You're picking how is the monster Naoya Inoue going to win. If you are a betting guy and got $100 lying around, I probably wouldn't do this one. It's not very likely, but if you were a betting guy and had $100 lying around, I was actually looking at the 2 weeks from now, Canelo Alvarez and Edgar Berlanga fight, because Edgar Berlanga, 27-year-old, Brooklyn, New York, all that stuff, 22 wins, 0 losses, 17 wins by knockout. It's going to be fighting Canelo Alvarez, number 1 pound for pound, potentially an all-time great. But he is a 1,200 underdog. If I had $100 lying around, maybe Edgar Berlanga is my guy. 100 down, I get back 1,200. It's a nice little vacation there, isn't it? A win by knockout gets you even more, up to 1,600. Some places have him as high as 2,200 to win by knockout. Now, I'm probably going to lose $100, but potentially winning 2,000. I don't know, guys. I don't know. However, like we were talking about, don't put it on TJ Doheny. I don't think that's worth it. I have a lot of faith in Naoya Inoue. Just incredible fighter. Also, Jon Jones and Tom Aspinall keep going back and forth here, and it's like, I mean, Tom Aspinall was doing his best to be respectful and just saying, I'm the interim champ. Jon, you need to fight me to be an undisputed champion. Not even for your legacy or anything else. Just come fight me because we're the two top guys here at heavyweight. Jon, come fight me. Jon didn't even respond. Didn't even give him the time of day. Didn't even, nothing like that. So Tom Aspinall changed his tactics and started coming out with attack videos. Like he's running an ad campaign for a political company. He has all these different attacks going on all the time. He's got videos. He's got this stuff. Your opponent is an old man. All this stuff. I'm hearing there's an injury. You're scared of me. Finally, Jon Jones gets on Twitter. That really pisses him off. He needs someone to be mad at. He needs someone to hate to really get his juices flowing. So Jon Jones is responding to people and he's saying, no, I'm going to fight Stipe and then ride off into the sunset. My legacy, I'm going to fight Stipe and then ride off into the sunset. My legacy is fully secure. And I don't disagree with him. His legacy is completely secure. He is an all-time great. Even if he loses to Stipe Miocic or loses to Tom Aspinall, I think that is just a situation where we say, yeah, he was old. He was older than he has ever been before. There's certainly a few miles on the speedometer. But so I think his legacy is entirely safe. But, we as fight fans are going to want to see good fights. Two top guys in the division. Let's go. But Jon Jones so clearly needs that motivating factor. So, back in 2021, Dana White had said that Jon Jones should move down to middleweight because Francis Ngannou is the champion. For Jon Jones should be scared of Francis Ngannou. If I was Jon Jones, I'd move down to middleweight. Now, 2024, Dana White says, yeah, Francis Ngannou was scared of Jon Jones the entire time. He didn't want to fight Jon Jones. It's not true. None of it's true, of course. Promoter's going to say whatever they need. Now, they're promoting Jon Jones like he's the golden goose. What that entirely means, the promoter is promoting their fighter, but we think they're probably in negotiations with a Conor McGregor, and they're trying to show he's not worth everything. The UFC is worth more than it has ever been in history, and he hasn't fought in the organization for 3 years or so. And we also have a huge draw over here with our Jon Jones guy. I think that's what's going on with that heavy promotion. But here's the thing with Jon Jones. So he vacated his light heavyweight title, I want to say off the top of my head, 2019. And then he didn't move up to heavyweight until like 2023 or something insane like this. Like he took forever to do it. And then since 2023, he has not fought. But in that timeline, he could have fought all these guys already. In this amount of time, since 2019, since he vacated his light heavyweight title, he could have fought Alex Pereira. He could have fought Stipe Miocic. He could have fought Tom Aspinall. He could have fought Cyril Gane. Who else am I missing? That's only like 4 or 5 fights in 4 or 5 years. He could have fought once a year and beaten all those guys. And most of those fights are pretty winnable for him, mind you. Tom Aspinall is the real question there. But I think he beats Cyril Gane. I think he beats, probably beats at that time Alex Pereira. Tom Aspinall, I'm really not sure about. But he beats Stipe Miocic, no doubt about it. That's the real problem, is that he's hanging his legacy on, I'm just going to do one more fight and then retire. Well, you've done one fight in 5 years. Why? Why now? Why retire now and not in 2019? Why you even fight at all? Just vacate the belt and walk away. If you want one more fight against a guy who is winless in the last little while here, Stipe has a great legacy. Maybe the greatest heavyweight champion in UFC history. Sure, you could argue that. Great legacy. But beating him, as he hasn't won since 2019 or something like that, he hasn't won in years. And his wins are against people who are not active in the UFC anymore. It's just, that's the old man division there. And here's the thing that people certainly aren't missing this. But forever, the UFC had promoted themselves as, we are the place that makes the fights that people want to see. We're not boxing where people are locked up in contracts and getting into disputes about this title or this title. We're not talking money. We make the fights that the people want to see. Well, look at their heavyweight division. They're not doing that. Francis Ngannou was in a contract dispute and walked away. Jon Jones right now is in a contract dispute and can't even be booked to fight, but he's not fighting Tom Aspinall. The fights that we want to see, not in the UFC. Right now, the UFC's heavyweight division looks just like boxing, where people are locked up in different contracts and will not fight each other. And it's all on the table. It could absolutely happen. But now, look at us. Look at what happened to us. It used to be the place where, at least the messaging, the ad campaign, was that we put on fights that people want to see. Now, it is the place where people sit around. Conor McGregor can't be booked. Jon Jones can't be booked. What are we doing here? Charles Oliveira, the former champion. I love this guy. He came in as a really young man. He won 2 tournaments when I think he was 18 or 19 years old. He essentially at that time had a little bit of jiu-jitsu and no stand-up at all, and just ran through guys. And then he entered the UFC and he kind of clearly didn't have any stand-up, did he? But then kind of wins and losses in featherweight for a long time, grew up, he's a very young man, took those early career losses in the UFC rather than in some builder organization. But he's ultra talented. Struggled in the UFC early on, struggled in his childhood that he couldn't eat food normally. He needed to raise money for his family to go to school. I think he had bone issues and heart issues and other stuff. At one point he wasn't going to walk. He wasn't going to live. The man has had so many issues in his life of overcoming it. And he moved up from featherweight to lightweight and then found his stride from there. He went on like a 12-fight win streak. Incredible wins along the way. Picked up the UFC title. Beat Justin Gaethje. Beat Dustin Poirier. Beat all these other guys. And such an action fighter as well. This guy wants to get into wars with people. He's constantly getting hit, getting back up, hitting his opponents down. Like his fight with Michael Chandler was so much fun, and that was a great time. Really quality left hook, quality front kicks, incredible jiu-jitsu as well. He does give up takedowns too easy, and that's his problem. Like Paul Felder really exploited that, and we saw that same thing against Islam Makhachev. Wins and losses there. And because of that story, he has become a fan favorite and a very reasonable fan favorite at that. He should be your favorite fighter. The guy just seems like a sweetheart. The guy seems absolutely awesome, but he is now getting ready for his next fight. He says, see you soon, and you're going to be surprised. Now, what does that mean? I've been pitching the Charles Oliveira versus Conor McGregor fight because I think that's a ton of fun. I think it's a good back and forth fight. It's 2 guys that we love. We want to see them fight. Or is he going up to welterweight, fighting someone like a Colby Covington or whatever it might be? I don't know. But he said you're going to be surprised. Now, Alexander Volkanovski was rumored earlier this week to be booked against Charles Oliveira. I think it's a great fight. It's a ton of fun. But Alexander Volkanovski was not too receptive when this was brought up. Apparently, it wasn't entirely true. And he's going to wait around a little bit and see what's going on with the featherweight title. But he said, Charles Oliveira, do Bronx. See you soon. I'm going to be surprised. So what do you want to see from Charles Oliveira? Who is next for Charles Oliveira? Welterweight? Is someone coming up from featherweight to face him? Is he fighting some retired lightweight? Eddie Alvarez? I don't know. RDA? So many fun fights in that division for him because he himself is a fun fighter and well worth watching. But folks, I want to hear from you on this and a bunch of other stuff, but I want to hear from you. Who do you want to see Charles Oliveira face next? Now, for me, again, it's going to be Conor McGregor. That's a fun fight. But I recognize maybe that's not realistic. He's probably fighting Michael Chandler in December. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Folks, that is Fight Weekly. Tim Wheaton, LowKick MMA. Folks, I massively appreciate your time. If you want to talk some kickboxing, there is some Rise One Championship, some other stuff going on this weekend that I will be talking about. And Glory from next week. Sorry, Glory from last week was really fun as well. I'm going to be talking about that on Wednesday on Kick Weekly on the other channel. But folks, with LowKick MMA, my name is Tim Wheaton. This has been Fight Weekly. Massively, massively appreciate your time, folks. I hope you enjoyed me trying to do a Dan Carlin impression this week. Let me see what else we got here. It's the big picture. The human condition. The extreme ends of the human experience. Now we're playing the what if game. And again. And again.
Make sure to subscribe to the LowKick MMA YouTube channel for all the latest news, event previews, and interviews with some of the biggest stars in MMA.